Hello. Welcome to Culture Vultures. I'm Sandy Frye, your host. Our creative producer is Nancy Cole. And this is a program that examines arts and culture throughout the Bay Area. There is a first coming up, a luncheon called Heart of the Arts. It's going November 3rd at the Tampa Convention Center, and it has an internationally known artist as its guest speaker, James Rosenquist. And with us today, we have two guests. Our first is Emery Alford, who's Dean of Academic Affairs at HCC Ybor. He's also chairman of the Hillsborough Arts Council and of the new foundation, Hillsborough Arts, Inc. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
Our second is Margaret Miller, who's director of Graphic Studio, Institute for Research in the Arts, and that's at USF. She knows James Rosenquist quite well and will give background on him as well as of Graphic Studio and all the myriad events that take place there. First, welcome.
Thank you.
And I think you have a double duty to
Yes.
perform in the next year at least.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us something about why Hillsborough Arts, Inc. was formed and how you came to do this.
Briefly, I moved to Tampa 10 years ago. My background is in music and came here to be the dean at the HCC campus and was very much interested in helping promote our programs to the community at large, and became aware of the Arts Council and applied and eventually was appointed to the position on the board. I'm now serving my second four-year term. This is my sixth year with the Arts Council, and I've been the vice chair for the last 2 years, and now with Jim Porter going off the board, I'm becoming the new chair. But one of the problems that the Arts Council has faced over the last several years is the dwindling of allocations that come to us from the county as part of our regranting program. And we do so much in terms of helping support a variety of groups, the individual artist grants to the cultural organizations from the Strauss Center down to the puppet theaters, and plus the work that we do with in the schools with Hillsborough County School District. So as the funds have dwindled to the point last year, we were looking at the possibility of a zero allocation from the County Commission. And some lobbying, we were able to get $200,000 restored that goes exclusively towards the grants program. And it was during that time that we were looking at what are other options for us in terms of raising funds to help support the arts throughout Hillsborough County. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, Tampa Theater had been under the umbrella of the Arts Council. Yeah. And Tampa Theater's thought was, in a better economy prior to what's happening now, that they might be better off to form their own foundation, which they have, the Tampa Theater Foundation, and to become a separate entity and hopefully boost their options for receiving grant money from different groups. I think that was kind of the impetus that then led us to think, as the Arts Council, that perhaps what we needed was a Friends of the Arts organization that could be that vehicle for us to go out and apply to corporations or the National Endowment for the Arts or something like that and get funded that way, and then we would become the channel for those funds to come into the Arts Council. Mm-hmm. And so I guess it was probably a year and a half or more ago that we took that seed and ran with it, and especially through the work of Art Keeble, was able then to get some direction, got an accountant, got the 501c3 paperwork done, and were approved. And so had an organizational meeting last December. I believe you were at that first meeting with us.
I wasn't. I was out of town,
okay.
but I intend to see it as it continues.
Good. And through that then, the idea became, okay, what can we do to, beyond just filling out paperwork and applying for grants, what can we do to try to increase the awareness of this particular group as the fundraising group, but also to continue to put the word out about the value of the arts to the county, to the public as it is. And the idea came up to have this Heart of the Arts luncheon. So that's where we're going now.
Well, you've certainly chosen a very, very interesting speaker. It was about 2 months ago. I was at Museum of Modern Art in New York, which had an exhibit with pieces from their collection. And I was thinking, if there was a lot of time has passed before I've seen this particular strand of modern artists in the, say, 70s, 80s, 90s. And I stood in the doorway and looked, and I was able to identify 3 immediately. One, of course, would be Andy Warhol. The second was Francis Bacon, who has such a way with demonstrating what anguish means that his technique is singular. And the third was James Rosenquist. And I think that it has to say something for those artists. And in a way, because of Graphic Studio, you have James Rosenquist here to speak to you. Mm-hmm. And for that, I'm going to ask Margaret, first of all, when did James Rosenquist come and work with Graphic Studio? And then take it from the concept of Graphic Studio and how it grew and what it's doing now.
Well, thank you, Sandy. I'd be pleased to talk about that. I think it's generally a very interesting topic about how we have to think of new ways to fund the arts. And we have to think in not only philanthropic terms, as your new organization will do so much for this community, but we also sometimes have to think a little bit in an entrepreneurial way. And that was the beginning of Graphic Studio in 1968, founded by now Dean Emeritus Donald J. Saff. And he was in the lucky position of being a dean like you are. And he had this idea that, well, there's not too much happening culturally down here in Tampa, Florida, and I'm a little bored being from New York, and maybe it'd be an interesting idea to bring in artists to the university and have them collaborate and create new art. And so was born this experiment in art and education called Graphic Studio, which I have the pleasure of directing now, but I am the 4th director of Graphic Studio, and it's really great history. And James Rosenquist was one of the first. He came in the early 70s. Donald Saff was very much part of a renaissance in printmaking. He'd been at Pratt. He understood as an artist himself what was involved in the processes. And he was very conscious of the other ateliers or studios in the country. I might add, almost all founded and run by women. Titania Grossman at ULAE, June Wayne out at Tamarind. And this renaissance in printmaking invited artists like James Rosenquist to the studios to try to make prints. And while Jim is really known as a painter, he embraced the possibilities of printmaking. And one of the things that Don did was get him to push the scale of printmaking. And that was very much probably when you went to the Museum of Modern Art, Sandy. One of the things you might have noticed in this recent exhibition is the scale of the work in the 70s and 80s, which engulfed you as a viewer. And Jim pushed the limits of the press beds of printmaking and made very large-scale prints. So I have an image here of James Rosenquist working at Graphic Studio, and you can see he has the maquette for what he's going to do taped to his stomach, and he's holding a mirror in one hand. And this is the way he's translating, because the plate in printmaking is backwards. And so he's looking at what it will look like and referencing that in the mirror before him. Well, Jim has come on and off to Graphic Studio over many, many years, and I can tell you that he's a great raconteur, so he shall be perfect for your luncheon. He's a great storyteller. Not sure that the stories always have a clear trajectory, but they certainly take you in a lot of interesting directions. And he's had, of course, as you have recognized, a very major career. He's known all over the world. In some senses, he's one of our leading pop artists, because some of the first things he did was billboards. And maybe that's the kind of technique that you see even realized in his printmaking. And so there's another image of him a little more recently, and the point there is that he's worked at Graphic Studio for many years. We even have him here. We had him here just a few years ago to do some prints. The third image is an image of a black and white etching, Welcome to the Water Planet, which became a key image known, it was actually used for the inauguration of one of the presidents at USF, Frank Borkowski. Ruth Fine, who did a major exhibition of graphic studio at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. I had her as a guest recently, and she said that was one of the best prints ever done in the whole 20th century, and right here at Graphic Studio.
And please add that they're archived by...
Yes, and the National Gallery archives everything produced at Graphic Studio. So you can see a couple of other images. There's one, the last one in the group really is this melting clock, which is sort of a new body of work that he has undertaken. One of the tragedies that occurred for Jim in the last few years was that there was an awful fire up in Arapica where his Florida studio exists. And he lost everything, and he lost a whole archive of all of the prints that he'd done all over with all sorts of presses, including Graphic Studio, and many of his paintings, and of course all of his property up there. But he still continues to paint in Florida, and I think he's been very generous to this community in a number of ways, lending works for exhibitions, speaking as he's doing at your luncheon, and really being an advocate for Tampa. And he'll tell a great story of first coming to Florida, I'm sure. But you've already got a kind of sense of what Graphic Studio is about. So more recently, we have continued along that lines of experimentation that the path that Don Saff set us on. And we've been working with younger artists, as well as long-established artists, but an artist like Teresita Fernandez, in which we have developed a technique for water jet cutting of polished stainless steel. And so we've developed a software program to translate her drawings so that they can talk to a water jet cutter and produce these very lacy, very Baroque stainless steel patterns in stainless steel, 2 layers, and we're screen printing on the back of the back layer. So that's one of our current innovations, and we've done a major commissions for Teresita and produced several limited editions of her sculptures. The advantage of being on a university campus is tremendous, because if we wanted, as we did for Keith Edmeyer, to figure out, could you pour molten lava? I mean, can you find a way to make lava? He thought of actually working in Hawaii, but that seemed a little problematic to us. So we worked with the geology department and actually found a way that in our foundry we could melt basalt. And there's a great picture that the viewers can see of pouring lava in our foundry. Now, those projects ended up actually being at the foot of cast plastic trees, cycad trees, for Keith Edmeyer. But more recently, we've gone back to a very traditional process of bronze pouring, and we've worked with a young artist from Syria, Diana El Hadid, who's just gaining lots of attention. She shows with a major gallery in New York, the Marion Boesky Gallery. We showed one of her pieces in New York at the Armory, and so the viewers can see this large-scale bronze melting figure. In Mortal Repose is the title of the work.
Is that
And here,
immortal or immortal?
Immortal.
Immortal.
Repose. And we're actually collaborating with Bronze Art down in Sarasota to produce 5 of these sculptures on very large plinths that can go out of doors.
About how high are they?
They're at eye level. The figure meets you kind of at eye level, so the plinth is really quite high. And it is really a terrific piece, and we got so much attention, and we sold all 5 of them. But this was an example of, I think, the research component of Graphic Studio, because this artist market would really not suggest that we could spend the money, which is about $75,000 to produce the piece, and the price of the piece was $65,000. You know, so we didn't even get our production costs, and mind you, we have to give the artist a share and the dealer a share. So it was lucky that this became such an interesting piece that we were able to find sales of all 5 of them.
That is.
So it's pretty much a break even, but what a great opportunity you give a young artist like Diana El Hadid to do work that she really couldn't do anywhere else without the technical help and the opportunity for full support, which is
Right.
what we do for our artists.
To say nothing of what it does for the students. who are engaged in this project who
Well,
won't be
Sandy,
daunted by anything.
I think,
if
you
they
know,
can make
that
lava.
really goes back to the fundamental mission of Graphic Studio, which was, as I said, an experiment in art and education. And the idea was that the creative process is the creative process, no matter whether you're in the sciences or the arts. And can you give students a glimpse into what it is, how artists think, how they work, how a project evolves? So the studio is open, and we offer many, many tours to university classes, as well as we just had St. Mary's, which is an elementary school, come. Those were the brightest kids in terms of the questions. And we do demonstrations for them, and they all walk out with a little piece of a print. And it's often they get to meet the artist that happens to be in residence, and actually the artist will stop and talk about what they're doing. So this is at all levels: community visitors, university students, faculty, come to just understand something about the inner workings of the artist's mind and how an atelier or a workshop really works. And the students that we take on as interns, as graduate assistants or internships or directed study, and sometimes they even come from other schools. Like we've had one brilliant one from Eckerd College that's come every summer and volunteered. I finally hired him. And they get so much out of that that they're able to take that that experience and actually find jobs because of their experience at working at Graphic Studio.
I will never think of Weeki-Wachi Mermaids the same again because of Janina.
I should tell you that we're very excited that we have been offered to do a survey show of Graphic Studio 1990 to the present, dipping back into its earlier history at the Tampa Museum of Art, and that'll be in January 2014. And so those projects that had one foot in Graphic Studio production, because Janaina made prints, but the artist Sandy's talking about is Brazilian-German, and she was doing these costumes that were sculpture for these water creatures. And we thought, actually Jay Dellinger, who's curating the exhibition, an independent curator in town, knew Janaina and introduced me to her and said, perfect, let's bring her down to Weeki-Wachi Springs and we'll put her costumes on the mermaids. So that was at the point, remember, when all of these big attractions in Florida, there was some sense that they may fold. Yes. And so we actually commissioned Weeki-Wachi Springs and all the mermaids. We brought in a high-definition underwater television crew, and we filmed underwater 3 costumes on Sativa, the head mermaid. And this was all edited into a 4-screen video installation, which we will show at the Tampa Museum of Art.
That will be mind-blowing. Because I've seen Weeki-Wachi Mermaids recently. It sparked my interest.
Oh, you went up there?
I did. And they are not muscular people, they're sinewy people, you know, because they have to keep rolling around and
well, you know,
grab
it's funny that you
hose.
say that because we had gone to Michael Foley in our dance department to see if he could assist with choreography, and they had all these plans, and it turns out these costumes were so heavy when they got water that the mermaids were just treading water just for a few seconds. So basically the video, you know, and then they would go and get a little, suck on a little air, that is slowed down. So this all looks very lyrical and dance-like, but frankly, they were really moving quickly to keep their heads above water. So that's another example. And from that, we had some underwater cameras, and we took some stills that then became the basis for photogravure prints and photolithography. And then Janaina has just come back, and she just did a huge mural for our new School of Music building. So the viewers will really have an opportunity to see more of Janaina's work. I didn't bring a slide of her work. But another great artist to talk about that I'm extremely proud of is Christian Markley. And because of the history of Graphic Studio, because of the caliber of artists that came, like James Rosenquist, you're able to attract the leading artists from around the world to come here. People think I can just call up anybody and get them to come. It's not that easy, and they have to see the value of what they can do at Graphic Studio to really make a commitment for their schedules. Well, Swiss-American artist Christian Markley won the Golden Lion Award at the Venice Biennale, probably the top-selling artist in the world at the moment. By luck, we attracted him 6 years ago, and he began to do experiments, which the viewers can see now, cyanotypes, which is a 19th century process of blueprinting. And he went in the studio, and he always has been interested in the mechanics of music, or the apparatus that produce music, or the kind of way things go out of date, like the cassette tape or like the record player. And so, and he also makes works into scores that can be performed. So we worked with him first on these cyanotypes, and we've published a book now. They're intensely blue, and he would you take an iron compound and put it onto watercolor paper, and then it's like sun prints that you might find at Mosey or someplace. And then he could pull the tape out of the cassettes and drop it onto this paper, and then you flash a light, and that creates basically a photogram, a cameraless rayogram or photogram. And he did several of these. We're just opened a whole show of them in San Francisco at the Frankel Gallery. We've sold to Museum of Modern Art is acquiring one. The National Gallery's acquired one. Yale has acquired one. So they've been acquired all over the world, even in Geneva at MAMCO at the Museum of Modern Art there. So then he's gone on to do scrolls made up of onomatopoeias derived from Japanese comic books. And we did a 60-foot scroll with him that was shown at the Whitney. And now we've just done hanging scrolls that are about to open in Tokyo. And so this is an artist that, frankly, is keeping Graphic Studio going, moving forward at the moment.
Well, Rauschenberg had
100-foot photograph.
You really deal in
And I may
major
show
images.
that. I think we might show that at the Tampa Museum. We've shown it once before there. That's a work that dates pre-1990, but is an example of the caliber of artists that Don Saff was able to bring early to Graphic Studio. One of the things that we're going to do with the Tampa Museum is providing the leadership for this. I have to be very clear about this because at the university we cannot use our time or money to do anything with Cuba. But a part of Graphic Studio's history has been a wonderful relationship with Cuba. And it really started, I should say, from a gift from a local man, Bob Franzblau, who gave me $100,000 to initiate projects with Cuba. So we have this wonderful woman, Noelle Smith, up at USF, and she is fluent in Spanish and knows the Cuban art scene. And we were able really to attract some of the leading artists from Havana to come. And of course, they'll be part of the Tampa Museum show. So here you can see a work by the Los Carpinteros, which is a flip-flop with a topographic map of Havana. And that was done in a computer as a 3D CAD program and output on a rapid prototyping machine. And then from there, we cast the sandal in rubber. And recently, they've done gigantic flippers that come 20 in a circle. This is always this theme about relationship with Cuba and the problems there. And so there are a few slides of that. This project has 20 flippers, and they're assembled in a circle, and they come in 3 different colors. They come in a turquoise, a yellow, and a red.
Very tropical.
So yes, and so this is the kind of thing that many people in Tampa, I don't think, really know about what goes on at Graphic Studio. So the Tampa Museum show will give them a glimpse into the richness of what Graphic Studio has been able to produce in collaboration with leading artists over the many years.
Right. Don Saff used to say Graphic Studio must be the best kept secret in the world. You could go to Paris and mention it, everybody would know it, or Italy, everybody would know it. But Tampa can stand to be apprised of it again, and that exhibit sounds like it's going to do the job.
It'll really be, I think, give people a glimpse into something maybe some don't know exists, but I think more and more are knowing about it.
I think so. And I know you're always willing to send out calendars of information for anybody who would be interested in knowing what exhibits are.
Your viewers can participate in so many ways. They can come to so many different events. For example, one of the scrolls will be performed in January, and that's an event people can attend. We have a wonderful blog and a great website. And if you follow the blog, you'll know exactly what artist is on campus. If you're interested, you're welcome to come up and visit. The studios can be toured at any time, and we're glad to have people walk through. We have a benefit sale, unfortunately, that just took place last Friday, but it was very successful. We had hundreds of people come, and a lot of work was sold in a very short time that benefits the studio and benefits collectors in Tampa.
Absolutely.
So there's lots of ways to participate. You just have to figure out how to,
Be aware of
or where we are.
Yes. And being aware of what the arts have to offer is very important, which is why Hillsborough Arts, Inc. and the Arts Council, which has been doing yeoman work, and good job all of these years, should be congratulated for finding ways to create even more work.
Thank you.
So I think that it will be a very nice event, and I'm looking for even more surprises, because one of the things you can count on with Graphic Studio and with the Contemporary Art Museum, of which Margie is director too, it goes into avenues of exploration that are constantly amazing
And challenging.
and challenging. But they're amazing and they are challenging. But I like amazement. I'm all up for amazement, and you never fail to disappoint. So I think that it's going to be a good thing. We have to wait for 2 years to 2014.
January 2014 is what we're talking with Todd about. But don't wait.
No, don't.
Come out and
That's
visit
right.
the museum.
You can
and
see it in progress.
just drop in and see what
Right.
we're up to.
And when we said James Rosenquist is one of the better known artists, that's true. And then you did have Rauschenberg, and you had Chuck Close, and you had
Roy Lichtenstein.
Roy Lichtenstein, you had Philip Pearlstein, excuse me, and I'm trying to think of Mel Ramos.
Let's see, Mel Ramos.
Ramos, I'm thinking of,
Yeah.
and the list goes on and on. Had you ever count up the number of people who
Yes,
have
we've
been?
had about 150 artists over this period of more than 40 years,
Oh.
and we've produced probably almost 2,000 projects.
That's amazing. That's
Sculpture,
amazing.
prints, in
Yes.
addition, et cetera. So it's very lively, and these days we have the next generation of just as prestigious artists,
I
if
bet.
not more so. I'd say Christian Markley's market is better right now than Rauschenberg's.
I bet. I'll bet.
So this is a
Okay.
chance to get in on the new artists of the future.
Thank you both for being
Sure.
with us, and I hope you enjoyed this. This is really one of the stellar art collectives in our community, art resources in our community, and the Arts Council, and now Hillsborough Arts, Inc. should be going on to bigger and better things.
We hope
Thanks
so.
for being with us,
Thank
and
you.
good luck.